Activity 10 is Euclidean distance measurements. We can use this to measure the average distance between objects in our image. For the Euclidean distance measurements, we're going to open up the ECD folder and open nuclei.tif. First thing we're going to do is set a threshold to identify the nuclei, and then hit apply to create a binary image. We might as well add in a woodshed to separate out any structures that are touching. Next thing we want to do is to go into binary options, process binary options, and make sure our EDM output now is set to 16-bit. Okay, next thing we're going to need to do is to invert the image. So we're not inverting the lookup table at this point, but the image. So edit, invert. So in this case, our structures we're interested in have 0 intensity and the background has high intensity. And what we're going to do is go into process, binary, and distance map. Okay, so what this does is it looks at our 0 intensity, and for every pixel it goes away from that 0 intensity, it adds 1 intensity value. So in our Euclidean distance measurement here, the brighter regions are further away, or regions that are further away from objects, and the darker ones are closer to the objects. To help us visualize this a little bit better, we're going to use a lookup table. And in this case, we're going to use the 16 colors lookup table, which is kind of cool. Next, we want to set the measurements. So in this case, we want mean gray value. We're going to set a threshold in a second, so we're going to limit to threshold, and we want display label. Okay, next thing we want to do is we want to identify, or we want to count the grayscale values in the area that isn't including our structures. So in this 16 colors, the black is our structures, and the blue, greens, yellows, and reds are the actual intensity from the distance measurement. So make sure we've got this window selected, image, adjust, threshold, and we want to bring that down so we're at 1, so we're not quantifying our structures, but we're looking at the intensity beyond those. So 1 to 65,000 grayscale values on a 16-bit scale. Again, we're not going to hit apply here because we're quantifying what's in the thresholds. We've got to analyze, measure. And this is giving us a mean intensity of 8.093 across the entire image. Now, even if your image is calibrated, this one isn't, this is in pixels, but even if your image is calibrated in microns, the intensity scales with pixels. So it's, if you remember, it's adding 1 intensity unit for every pixel. So this is actually a pixel value, even if your image is calibrated. So you'd have to go back, work out what your pixel dimensions are, and multiply the size of the pixel by your mean value here to give you an actual average distance between the objects.